Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So it is finally October, and you might expect me to be doing my September wrap-up, but I'm going to be doing that later because I wanted to make sure that I got this video up as early as possible. Every single year I do a list of books that I think have the vibe for spooky season. I've been doing this, I think, since the beginning of my channel. I have many that I've accumulated over the years, but there's not that many books that are focused on Halloween or autumn vibes in the horror lit world, and that's always bothered me, and it's something that I always try and find every single year. So I do have lists that are all going to be linked down below of all of my picks from previous years. Because there don't seem to be as many as I would like, I'm only going to have 3 this year because I don't want to kind of force books into a box that they don't fit. So we're going to go through 3 books that I think perfectly fit the spooky season, Halloween, early fall vibe that everybody loves to have during spooky season, and share those with you. Now again, these are just 3 books that I am recommending to add on to my previous list. So if you're like, this book should be there, this other book should be there, check out all of my other lists from previous years because they're probably on that list. And if I did miss something, recommend me a book down below because I love reading books about Halloween during October. It's like one of my favorite things to do. So first up, we're going to talk about That Night in the Woods by Christopher Triana. Now, I love Christopher Triana. He's one of my favorite authors. He is more of an extreme horror author, and I will say that the ending of this book does have some very extreme tones to it. I am not the biggest fan of the conclusion of this book. I think it went a little too far in my personal opinion. However, the atmosphere of this story, the setting of this story, the imagery in this story is so perfectly autumnal and perfectly Halloween that I would feel so wrong not including this on this list. I'm going to read the back of the book. When Jennifer receives a message from Scott Dwyer after 20 years without contact, her first reaction is one of excitement. Scott was her first love, and now that she's in her 40s and in the middle of a divorce, nostalgia gets the better of her. Jennifer is invited to Scott's house in Redford, the very same town she grew up in. It's a place she's made great effort to put behind her, for not all of her childhood memories are sunny. When she accepts and returns to her old hometown, she struggles with mixed feelings, especially when she learns of the death of Stephen Weiners, one of her childhood friends. Scott invites 3 other people there from their past to honor Stephen's memory, Corey, Tracy, and Mark. But the group is more than old friends. They share a dark secret that has troubled them for decades. Now it's time to face their traumatic past. Together, they must unravel the mystery of what happened that night in the patch of forest behind Scott's house, a place once known as Suicide Woods. From the author of Gone to See the Riverman comes a chilling novel that reminds us old ghosts are the ones that haunt us most. Alright, now that might not sound the most Halloween-centric, but a lot of this book is told from a kind of like flash forward, a flashback perspective, so we get a look at these main characters when they are kids, going through the woods on I think it's Devil's Night. I don't think, it might not be Halloween night, it might be Devil's Night, versus them now as adults. There are jack-o'-lanterns involved, there are costumes involved, there is creepy autumnal woods involved. It is great, it is creepy, it is scary. There is a jack-o'-lantern hidden on the cover, and it just gives me a lot of those kind of woodsy autumnal vibes. I grew up suburbs of DC, right on a patch of woods, so when I think of Halloween, I think of trick-or-treating and just seeing a dark array of forest right looming over our street, and this really made me feel like I was back as a kid in that neighborhood. I really could feel that, and I loved the atmosphere of this book. Again, be warned, check the trigger warnings on this book. It does get more extreme towards the end, and that is actually what ruined this book for me, was how much I wasn't prepared to handle the extremeness of the end. But up until that point, I was pretty happy with this book, and I really loved the atmosphere and the setting and the mystery behind it. I thought it really nailed Halloween. Next up, The September House by Carissa Orlando. Oh, I adore this book. I think this book is unlike any haunted house story I have ever read in my life. It is not set in Halloween, and it's not set in October. It is very much set in September. However, it really holds on to that fall vibe. Everything about this book is very much rooted in the beginnings of fall, and it is fully centered on a really unique haunted house and a very, very scary story. And I love this book so much. I'm going to read the inside flap for you. When Margaret and her husband Hal bought the large Victorian house on Hawthorne Street for sale at a surprisingly reasonable price, they couldn't believe they finally had a home of their own. Then they discovered the hauntings. Every September, the walls drip blood. The ghosts of former inhabitants appear, and all of them are terrified of something that lurks in the basement. Most people would flee. Margaret is not most people. After 4 years, Margaret has learned how to live with the house. It's her house, after all. But Hal can't take it anymore, and he leaves abruptly. Now he's not returning calls, and their daughter Catherine, who knows nothing about the hauntings, arrives, intent on looking for her missing father. To make things worse, September has just begun, and with every attempt Margaret and Catherine make to find Hal, the hauntings grow more harrowing because there are some secrets the house needs to keep. I really don't want to say anything beyond this is one of the best haunted house stories I've ever read, ever. And that the spooky atmosphere is perfect for spooky season, because I think this is a book that the less you know about what this book is actually about, the better. This book blew me away. It is so much more than a haunted house story. It is an allegory, it is a metaphor, it is a critique on certain family dynamics, and I absolutely adore it. It's also very, very funny at times, and you kind of find yourself laughing amidst all of these awful things that are happening, and I loved the balance of it, and I just thought this was an absolutely fantastic book. I cannot wait to read more from Carissa Orlando. I'm fairly certain this was her debut novel, and this blew me away. I can't wait to see what else she comes out with. This is what she started with, because this is so unique. So if you want a really good haunted house story that is not at all cliche and very different from all of the typical spooky season haunted house stories that there are, definitely pick this up. You know, like if you want a cute and cozy horror story about a haunted house, grab a Darcy Coates book. I love Darcy Coates. I've put her on these lists before. She's fantastic. This is not a Darcy Coates book. This is very much not. There is a very, 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 very heavy subject matter in the center of this book. If you need to check trigger warnings, definitely make sure you're aware of some of the subject matter that's in this book, because it is there. It's very pivotal to the plot, and it really kind of comes at you out of nowhere. But I thought this book was absolutely brilliant, and it was one of my top 10 books of last year. I believe it was last year, because of how much it just impressed me and blew me away. And it's a fantastic read, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it, even if it's not spooky season. Okay, and last but not least, I read this towards the end of October last year, and I have to share this again because I think this is fantastic. This is October Screams, a Halloween anthology. It is edited by Kenneth W. Kane. I really want them to release more of these. I do not like short story collections normally, but I love short stories about Halloween, so I picked this up and I devoured this collection. This collection is amazing. You have stories by Brian Keene and Richard Shizmar, Gemma Amor, Keelan Patrick Burt, Clay McLeod Chapman, Philip Fracassi, Todd Kiesling, Ronald Malfi, Red Legault. So many amazing authors in this, and it is so spooky. It is so well done. It is so creepy. There's so many standout stories, and it is just so perfectly capturing spooky time and spooky season from a whole different wide set of angles. I'm going to read the back flap. So it says, immerse yourself in a world of Halloween horrors with this bone-chilling anthology of tricks and treats from some of the best writers in horror today. Brace yourself for a wickedly thrilling journey through the shadows, where the moonlit night and the haunting spirits beckon. Carve pumpkins, don your costumes, and explore macabre tales that will send shivers down your spine. With each turn of the page, you'll be transported back in time to your childhood, to a world where the boundaries between the living and the dead blur, where the supernatural holds sway, and where the night itself keeps secrets waiting to be unraveled. Are you ready to embrace the darkness and experience the thrill of Halloween like never before? Yes, I am. There were so many really, really great stories. I will say that the opening story, Sweet Meat by Clay McLeod Chapman, is one of the short stories that kind of convinced me, even though I didn't like Ghost Eaters, to kind of keep reading Clay McLeod Chapman's work. And I'm so happy I did, because I read What Kind of Mother right afterwards, and I really, really loved that book. I enjoyed Whisper Down the Lane as well, but Clay McCoy Chapman was one of those authors to me that he hadn't fully wowed me yet, and his short story in this convinced me to read What Kind of Mother, and that wowed me. So I was really, really happy with that. This is also the collection that introduced me to Red Legault. Her short story, Free Candy and Telescope Views, I thought was absolutely fantastic, and I thought it was a really interesting, almost Twilight Zone style of story. And now I really want to read more from her. I believe she has a couple books coming out this year, so I am so excited to read everything else that she has to put before us. And I'd never heard of her before, and it just like really made me like super, super excited. Another story I loved was the Hooper Street Halloween Decoration Committee, which was by Gemma O'Moore. I read that book and I was so I read that short story and I was really impressed with it, and it convinced me to read Full Immersion, which is a book that I had received in Nightworms that had been sitting on my shelf forever. Unfortunately, I didn't love that book at all, but I really loved the Hooper Street Halloween Decoration Committee. I thought it was weird and whimsical and funny, which unfortunately are all things that I didn't think that Full Immersion was, but it did convince me to read more from her. And then finally, I think my favorite story, and the one that has stuck with me the most, was Doll by this author Ryan Van Ellis, who I've never actually heard of before. And this is the story that whenever I think of this collection is the first one that I jump to. And it's a story from the perspective of a creepy doll that is used as a Halloween decoration in the house of the family that purchased her. And I thought it was a really, really interesting way to do the creepy doll story. But it was very unique and very unlike what I expected it to be, and I really, really loved that story. And it is bleak and it is dark, but I couldn't get it out of my mind after I read it, and I just absolutely loved the idea of these kind of sentient Halloween decorations who are just kind of content being these Halloween decorations, and the kind of bond that they have with the family who takes them in, even though they know that they're very, very frightening. So I love that. I think this is an absolutely fantastic collection, and I can't recommend it enough, and I definitely think you guys should pick this up if you see it. I got this at Little Ghost Bookshop in Toronto, Canada. I love that bookshop so much. They always have an amazing horror selection, especially with like, well, they're a horror book store, so of course they do. But they always actually have anthologies that sometimes kind of speak and jump out at me. Anyways, that is all that I have to add to my spooky season reading list. Again, I know this was a short one, but I have many, 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 many books on my other list for you guys to check out. Those are all linked below. And yeah, that is all that I have for you guys today. Please recommend any books that I have not added on these lists, and I will be sure to try and read them for this spooky season. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoyed these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah!